Okay, so we're going to go over the show what you know that you did to show me how much you know about fractions. So this is page 9 in the packet. And first I'm going to do number 1 and number 2. So okay. So for number 1, when you are adding fractions, you obviously need to have a common denominator. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite both of these fractions to have a common denominator. Their common denominator is going to be 15. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. And for this one, 3 goes into 15 5 times. And 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Now, when you're adding fractions that have a common denominator, you keep the denominator and you add your numerators. So negative 20 plus 6 is going to be negative 14. So the answer is negative 14 fifths. And hopefully there weren't too many questions on this, because you should know when you add fractions, you need a common denominator. Now, number 2 is a little bit trickier. And I suggest strongly for number 2 that you're adding 2 mixed numbers. I want you to just pretend for a second that the fractions didn't exist. So what would 3 plus negative 5 be? 3 plus negative 5 would be negative 2. So your estimate is going to be negative 2. Now, how did I get a negative 2? I got negative 2 because if they're opposite signs, you find the difference. And the difference means subtraction. And we always take the big number and subtract the small number. Okay? So that means for these problems, I'm going to start out, I know my answer is going to be negative because the negative is bigger than the positive. I'm going to start out with 5 1/5. And I'm going to subtract 3 4/5 because I know I'm going to start out with the 5 and subtract the 3. So setting this problem up is probably the hardest thing. And I know my answer is going to be negative. Why do you know it's going to be negative? Because there were more negatives than positives. So now I have it set up like this. And when I try to say what's 1/5 minus 4/5, I say can't be done. That means I have to borrow from the 5. So this becomes 4 and 1 1/5. Or I'm going to write it as 4 6/5 minus 3 4/5. And I end up with 1 2/5. And I know it's negative because I already put the negative sign there. So the answer is negative 1 2/5. This is not the only way to do the problem. So I'm going to show you another way. But the thought process at the beginning is the same. You have to say, take the big number, subtract the small number. So I know it's going to be 5 1/5 minus 3 4/5. And I know my answer is going to be negative. That's the kind of thing you take care of first. You find the sign, you put it on the line. Now I'm going to change these to mix to an improper fraction because I think it's going to make the problem easier. So this becomes 26 fifths. And I'm going to subtract 19 fifths. And I'm going to end up with 7 fifths. I know my answer is negative. And I also know that 7 fifths is the same as negative 1 2/5. Okay? So that is problem number 1 and 2. I will do a different video for the rest.